Welcome to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. We are joined today by Alex Padilla. He is a member of the California State Senate. He is a nominee for Secretary of State in our state of California. Congratulations, sir. Came in first in the June primary, in the jungle primary. How'd it work? How were you able to come in first?
Well, thanks, Brad. Good to be back on this show.
Sure.
And I'll tell you, it was an experience. I mean, this top two vote getter system is still relatively new for California. We've been through one cycle of congressional candidates, legislative candidates. This is the first time that all the constitutional offices are run under the top two vote getter system. And a lot of people ask me along the way, how does it feel if you have to campaign to not just Democrats? And I said, you know what, I get to campaign to not just Democrats in the primary. I started in local government, 7.5 years on the city council.
I remember.
In Los Angeles before I ran for the legislature.
Nonpartisan office.
Nonpartisan office, so I'm used to working with everybody. I'm a proud Democrat. I'll stand by my core beliefs and my core issues. But to get things done, you got to work with everybody. That's what I've done legislatively, and I had a chance to do that politically again, and we earned our way into the top vote getter spot.
And I want to ask you about what's going on right now in the controller's race. If you had been Secretary of State now, you would be looking over a recount, because as we know, Ashley Swearingen came in first, mayor of Fresno. The second place spot, battle between Betty Yee and John Perez. When all the votes were counted, Ms. Yee came out on top by 1/100th of a percent.
481 votes to be exact. So when you think about the multi-million number of votes cast statewide, that is the razor thinnest of margins. So one of the things that we're going to try to do, if not this year, certainly next year in California, is to establish an automatic recount provision. Most other states in the nation, whether it's a 0.1% difference, a 0.5%, 0.100%,
0.100,
when a race is that close, all votes ought to be recounted just to ensure the accuracy and the integrity of the result.
What's interesting to me is at this stage, as we speak today, Mr. Perez has chosen to call for recounts of certain counties and certain precincts. I mean, to me, I'm not asking for a legal opinion, but it sounds kind of like, shades of Bush v. Gore, where one vote's more important than the other because you're picking which votes to recount.
Right, and when it comes to, people's perception of government and politics, or people's faith and confidence in government and politics, that doesn't help. To be honest, it is consistent with the law and the rules. It's allowed today, but is it the best way to do it? I don't think so. Again, in the future, I think any race that's this close ought to trigger an automatic recount of all votes cast, all counties, not just get a chance to cherry pick, well, this county, that county, because I did better, and then put the other candidate in the position of, well, if I fall behind during the recount, now I got to step up and start paying for this recount to try to regain the lead.
For that law to pass, would it be a bill through the legislature? Would we need to go to the voters? Do you have a sense? I don't know the answer.
No, that can be done via the legislature, and obviously a signature by the governor.
2/3 vote or 50% plus 1?
50% plus 1.
So are there discussions already? I mean, you're still in the legislature right now to move this forward, because this is a shock to the system like we've never seen.
Yes, and so we are technically in our summer recess of the legislature, but I'm already getting emails from colleagues both in the Senate and the Assembly saying, is there a way to get this bill introduced before the end of this year's session?
But it couldn't impact this recount right now.
It wouldn't impact this recount. This recount has to be operated under current law, and probably not even November. So we're looking at putting a new law that would take effect January 1st, 2015 going forward.
So as you've traveled around the state before we break, how's it going for you?
I feel great. Again, not just the result of the June primary, but I couldn't be happier with this pledge that I made when I first announced my campaign. I promised to visit all 58 counties in California for a couple of reasons.
Are you there? Have you done it yet?
39. Today will be 40.
Okay, right.
With 18 more to go.
Okay, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Alex Padilla. For our viewers on HLN, thanks for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. So, sir, I want to speak with you about the California State Senate, an august body that has really suffered over the last several months. We've had 3 members of the California State Senate under indictment. One has been convicted. Members that many have loved and revered, and yet they've fallen under a cloud of suspicion. How has that been for you as a member of a body of just 40? I mean, it's a club.
Yeah, it's frankly, a little disappointing and extremely frustrating. I can tell you, to be in elected office is the last thing I thought I'd be doing when I was growing up.
I know, Mr. MIT.
Well, no, not only that, but when it came to politics, I was just as cynical as anybody, right? It's greed, it's corruption, this and that. And it wasn't until I got involved in my first campaign and started meeting people that were on staff in city halls and state capitol that I realized most people are in it for the right reasons.
Right.
We want to help, and both Democrats and Republicans, we want to improve public safety, we want to improve education, we want to improve the economy. We all know what we want to do. But how we go about our job is critically important. And when we have these distractions, at a minimum, that we've had this year, like you said, not just one, not two, but 3 members of the State Senate of California, that takes away from our ability to do the budget work that we need to do, to reform education more like we need to do.
At the same time, the Senate has decided to take up ethics reform. A lot of it's focused on fundraising. And I want to ask about fundraising, and if I may use the Leland Yee case as an example. Senator Yee was indicted, and if you read the information in the affidavit, it appears he wasn't seeking funds for personal gain. He was looking to fundraise. And so it speaks to the pressures of fundraising. And I'm not casting aspersions, I'm not making statements about Mr. Yee, but it takes a lot of money to run for office. And what the Senate is doing right now is looking at putting limits on when money can be raised. Begs the question, if you're limiting when money can be raised, doesn't it put more pressures on fundraising, make it harder to fundraise, and then create a more likelihood of shenanigans? Right,
and I've authored a bill to that effect myself this year. And in doing the homework of crafting a fundraising blackout period, as we refer to it, we know that there's a dozen other states in the nation that currently have a fundraising blackout period of some sort in place already. There's an additional 3 states, Florida, forgetting the other 2 at the moment, but they had fundraising blackout periods that were challenged in court and overturned because they were too aggressive. So when I first introduced my bill that said, look, for the last 100 days of session, which would encompass the budget period and the end of session when the most important votes of the year are cast, no fundraising. There's plenty enough time in the rest of the year to raise the money for your campaign,
is there, though?
re-election. Look, I've been at this for 15 years, again, at the city council level and at the state level. From experience, yes, I think there's plenty enough time to garner the resources necessary to run a viable campaign.
But that
most elected officials will tell you what I tell you. Fundraising has nothing to do with how I cast my votes. But we can say that till we're blue in the face. If the public doesn't believe it, then we have a problem with democracy. And I do believe the time has come for some sort of blackout period.
But would the blackout period apply to a challenger who's not in the body?
So there's 2 efforts afoot. My legislation that would put the requirement of a blackout period in state law. And so the consequences would be a violation of state law and the repercussions of that. The way I've drafted my bill initially didn't. It only applied to legislators. The current form does apply to all candidates from a level playing field concern. That seems to be stuck in the assembly right now. But so the other track that we followed is the Senate, the state Senate alone, as a House rule, has adopted this blackout period for the end of session. Doesn't apply to the assembly. And a violation, well, it's up to the Senate leadership to determine what the consequences would be if somebody doesn't abide by the rule.
What about the notion of raising money for 2 different offices? We often hear about people having different office holder accounts. I may run for lieutenant governor, I may run for Congress.
Again, I think that's a loophole in the law currently. The members that we've heard about that have done that are allowed to by law today. So another part of my bill package, if I can't appear on the ballot before the voters for more than 1 office at a time, I shouldn't be able to raise money for more than 1 office at a time. And we're all allowed to change our minds. Maybe I wanted to run for this and I decided to run for that. There's provisions in place to allow you to transfer the money or zero out 1 account before you start the second one. But we have to be more straightforward and honest with the voters.
His name is Alex Padilla. He is a member of the California State Senate, also a nominee for Secretary of State of California. That election will be held in November 2014. My name is Brad Pomerantz. It's California Edition.
What is the estimated cost of a complete recount in the state of California? 2, 3, 5, or $7.5 million? The approximate cost to conduct a complete recount in California totals $3 million.
This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. We are joined today by Caren Ray. She is a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Luis Obispo County. And I thought, Supervisor, today we'd speak about the role of boards of supervisors. I think so often media, print, broadcast, radio is focused on City Hall. Yet, in a lot of ways, County Hall can be more important, at least with some areas of government. Talk to us about it.
Well, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is I think that people just have this view that politicians are so disconnected from them, and they don't really even know what politicians do for them. So I think it's really important to bring that to this piece. Now, when we talk about a county supervisor, I think what makes this such a powerful position and one of such import to your average person is that counties occupy this odd space where they're an arm and a delegate of the state. And so they are administering huge amounts of money and huge programs on behalf of the state and on behalf of their constituents.
You speak the truth. Not only does state money flow through the county, but federal money flows through the county. Rarely does state or federal money go to cities. I mean, it can, but it really is the county that implements the vision of the state and or the federal government. For example, whatever one may think about the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, who's implementing it on the local level?
Exactly.
The county.
The county is, we're responsible for doing that. We're responsible for allocating and spending the money, doing the hiring, getting the right people in place to be able to implement those programs. And so the HR component, the human resources component is huge. And everybody knows hiring the right person is the key. And so that's a huge part, about 2/3 of our budget goes to health and human services.
Right. What's also interesting, and this depends on the county, but you look at California's 58 counties. 3 counties have no cities in them, 0. Whereas in San Luis Obispo County, there are 7 cities, but significant portions of the county are unincorporated, which means what for the supervisor?
Well, it depends on the supervisor and it depends on the district. So for example, if you're talking about District 3, a large part of District 3, including Grover Beach and Pismo Beach, is incorporated. So it's got a different, and parts of San Luis as well.
Sure.
So it's got a different character for the supervisor than my district, District 4, which only about 1/3 of my district is incorporated, Arroyo Grande. So I also serve Napomo, Oceano, and outlying areas.
So do you effectively become the mayor?
I don't know if mayor's the right thing, but yeah, in a way, yes, because I'm the first. I'm the one directly elected decision-making official for that district. So when the people elect, their direct decision-making for the elected officials starts at the Board of Supervisors.
So what's the difference for someone living in your district if they live in Arroyo Grande, a city, or if they live in Napomo, an unincorporated area? How is their life impacted by that absence of a layer of government?
You know, I think that what it comes down to in a real sense, rather than a technical sense, is if you live in an incorporated area, typically the city takes care of your most basic infrastructure needs, the roads, the bridges, those things, with help from other entities. They also take care of the public safety components. So they generally will take care of fire and police. Now, some cities contract that and go into joint powers agreements and all of that, but they're responsible for those pieces. So when I was city gosh, I can't even say it anymore.
City council member.
City council member for Arroyo Grande, we managed a $25 million budget, and we represented 17,000 people. Now I manage help manage a $500 million budget, so over $500 million. Making sure that is, and we do relatively the same things for the unincorporated areas. So we provide for the sheriff service, we provide for CAL FIRE service.
When we come back, I want to talk more about the day-to-day existence of a member of a Board of Supervisors. It's really one that's quite compelling. Her name is Caren Ray. For our viewers on HLN, thank you for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. So, Supervisor, you went from representing 17,000 people in Arroyo Grande, which is, by the way, is a beautiful city, home of Zac Efron, if I may say.
And very well run.
Exactly, very well run. To representing a county of about 300,000, so you represent a fifth of that in terms of voters, which is 50,000, 60,000.
It's roughly $52,000 people per supervisor, and in my district, it's about 30,000. Not a little over 30,000 are in unincorporated area.
And what's interesting about your district is it's large geographically. geographically. You know, some boards of supervisor seats, they're compact. You have, I mean, from top to bottom, it's what, a nice 30, 45-minute drive?
Oh, no, not for my district.
Oh,
no,
it's tighter?
Yeah, it's much tighter
Okay.
and longer.
Okay.
It reaches all the way out to the Caren County line out to
So
the
then
east.
how far that way?
Oh gosh, probably 60, 70 miles. Yeah.
So as a result, talk to me about your day-to-day.
So a lot of people, again, don't know what the Board of Supervisors
Right.
actually physically does. So on Tuesdays are our board meetings. So that's when the decisions get made. We reach out, we have public comment, we have staff reports. Those are the things that you read about in the newspaper. But the other days are like this, especially in San Luis County. On Monday, all 5 supervisors are in their offices, and staff rotates through the offices because we can't have more than 2 people in one room at the same time because it's a Brown Act violation.
Can I speak with you about that for a moment? Because I am quite fascinated by the Brown Act. I think that's one way to say it. The Brown Act was passed, I think it was in the 50s, and it prevents members of elected bodies from speaking to a majority of their membership about any specific issue.
It's a good thing, and let me tell you why. It's
Okay.
a really good thing. And the reason why is because as the 5 of us at the County Board of Supervisors level are sitting on the 4th floor and figuring
Right.
out what we're going to do and doing our research, if we were able to meet as a decision-making body without the public presence, we don't have democracy anymore.
But what about negotiation? What about collaboration?
All of those things happen in real time in front of the public unless it's a matter that is not
Personnel,
subject to the
right.
board, to Brown Act, including personnel, including litigation and sensitive matters like that. So
I think about business, and I think about, you know, in business, it's all about the relationships. It's about building trust. And if you can't even speak to 2 people at the same time, I mean, you can't be at a party together,
oh
essentially.
yeah, you can. You can. You just can't be speaking on any matters that are currently before the board. So you can
But
speak
it's dicey.
in it is, yeah.
I mean, I actually, I don't know if I should take pride from this, but I was listed in a Brown Act violation attempt. I mean, apparently, there's a city whose name I will not mention, and I think it was 3 members just happened to be booked one after another on this show, and someone claimed that was a Brown Act violation because they were here at the same time.
If they're all here at the same time talking about the same
Which they were
subject,
not.
then you
Right.
may have what's called a
Serial meeting. But
Yeah.
that's what's so interesting is, you know, sometimes the Brown Act can be used as a weapon.
It can, absolutely. Brown Act, FPPC, all of those
Right.
mechanisms can all be used as weapons, but ultimately they're there to protect the public. And it doesn't, you know, I've been doing this a long time, I'm doing this about 10 years. The Brown Act stuff comes as second nature
You're
to
okay
me
with
now.
it?
Oh, absolutely. And I really believe so strongly in the public being able to comment and have a shot at really meaningfully giving input into the process.
Okay, so Mondays you do the staff rotation.
Right.
Tuesdays you're
got
getting
board
ready for the meeting.
Wednesdays, we have other committees that we sit on as a group. So that includes air pollution control district. So again, these are the things that we do that preserve the quality of life and that make sure that we're defending the county in the way that our
SLOCOG,
vision is.
I mean,
So
whatever.
yes, so Council of Governments, and for the people who are watching, SLOCOG manages both the state and federal monies for transportation and infrastructure. Especially as related to transportation, and we have IWM. I can't say it.
IWMA,
Thank
Integrated
you.
Waste Management. I knew
Authority.
that, right.
Yes, and so we're dealing with solid waste essentially, and then many of us sit on. Every year we give assignments to individual supervisors to sit on various committees.
Interesting, though.
And so I also sit on the Economic Vitality Corporation as well.
What about Thursdays?
So Thursdays, I can't speak for the other supervisors for Thursdays and Fridays, but I'm sure it's probably the
Similar.
same. My Thursdays are generally reserved for constituent response, so I'm out in the field. So I'm in Napomo every Thursday morning. I'm in either Oceano or Arroyo Grande on Thursday afternoons. Less so in Arroyo Grande because they have local government,
Right.
so I don't have to.
Right.
I don't have to be there as often. And then Fridays is where we pack in everything else. All the business meetings, all the appearances, all those things also
in the
fill in.
depth of my core, I am compelled by what supervisors do, and I thank you for being a member of the board. You were plucked out of a wonderful high school position to join the board, and I wish you the best of luck in all that you do. Her name is Caren Ray. She's a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Luis Obispo County. I'm Bright Pomerantz. It's California Edition.
Out of 296 members of boards of supervisors in California, how many are women? 68, 102, 139, or 162? According to the California State Association of Counties, 68 women are serving on boards of supervisors.
This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. We are joined by Frank Mecham. He is a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Luis Obispo County. And as many of us know, in North San Luis County, specifically the Paso Robles area, there is a water crisis. You were mayor of Paso Robles. You live in Paso Robles. Your family's in Paso Robles. How's it going?
Well, I think Paso Robles is probably well situated, as are some of the other communities that signed on to the National Water Project.
Right.
So they have a supplemental water source. But putting that in, I guess, in context with the larger part of our issue, it's not just the North County that's having a water issue. We have the South County.
True.
We have the coast. And there's 3 areas that have been considered to be level 3 severity in terms of our water capability. And it seems to be exacerbated by our drought.
What's remarkable is you talk about the levels of severity. At this stage, 100% of California is classified as in severe drought, 80% in extreme drought, 36% in exceptional drought.
And we're in exceptional.
Yeah, so this is scary. I mean, for a lot of us, it's very scary. And for folks in North County, and I'm talking about it just because you represent that area, sure. I mean, this is the people's livelihoods.
Exactly.
I mean, there's a lot of folks who work in ag. A lot of folks don't have access to water other than through groundwater, so they're drilling wells and the wells are empty.
Well, right now the county has established a drought task force. And as you know, the governor declared the state of California as a state of disaster because of the drought. We, in addition to that, declared a disaster for San Luis County. So I felt all along that, look, if this is a disaster, if this is an emergency, why are we not treating it the same way we would treat an earthquake, a flood, a fire? And I don't think we're as aggressive with this as we should be. So I volunteered to sit on the task force, and we have a meeting coming up next week to talk about this. So I think because one of your questions about what are folks going to do if it gets worse and the loss of water. For example, Paso Robles just passed on their board to allow for folks to get some of their water. They could find a place to do that, and I'm not sure how they're going to structure it.
Right.
But they have water to be able to provide to people. Now they got to be able to figure out how to get it from one place to another.
You mentioned that folks don't seem to. Your suggestion is that they're not really appreciating the severity of the drought. You know that Governor Brown, in his declaration, asked for a 20% voluntary pullback on water usage.
California's at 5%.
Exactly, you knew, yeah. So we're not seeing a lot of movement on the question of severity. I mean, look, we could be taking shorter showers, not flushing the toilets when you know what. I mean, there are a lot of things we can be doing, not mowing our lawns as often or watering our lawns.
The largest percentage of the water used during this time of year is outside irrigation.
And that gets dicey.
It does, and I had to walk the walk if I was going to talk the talk. Right. I ripped out all my lawns. I had no lawns at all. I took out all of that that needed heavy irrigation, and I put in drought tolerant and pavers to eliminate that, because I didn't want somebody walking by my house and seeing a lawn being watered.
If you think about Paso has grown up on wine, and grapes, they love water.
They do.
And so it's a real tough call, because if all of a sudden the wine industry leaves Paso for whatever reason, natural or man-made or whatever it may be, and that will decimate the area.
Well, and that has to play, that's part of the equation, is the economy. I mean, how do you insert the economy along with the needs of, the fundamental needs of humanity? I mean, you need water and air and food. You don't have one of the 3, you're not going to make it.
I want to continue our conversation. I also want to talk about specifically what's happening in Paso, and it really begs the question of a larger issue of how do you hand out water rights. We're looking at whether a water district should be formed. I think we should continue that conversation. For our viewers on HLN, we thank Supervisor Frank Mecham for joining us. For our other viewers, we're going to be right back speaking more about the water crisis in the great state of California. So, sir, let's talk about the formation of what's known as a water district. I understand you become an expert on water districts, so let's back up for a second.
I don't know if I'm an expert.
What exactly is a water district? What can you tell us?
There's several different types of water districts. What they call an off-the-shelf California water district is basically designed to accommodate agriculture, large landowners that use a lot of the water. They vote on a 5-member board. They vote per acreage, and they can establish
per
acreage, as opposed to a one person, one vote, or a registered voter. And they don't have to go. They have no requirement to go to the state legislature for any authority. They have no desire or no need to go to the County Board of Supervisors. They go direct to LAFCO, which is the local agency formation. LAFCO would assist with creating the boundaries, and also limiting or creating what their authority would be. So you have that. You have also an irrigation district. You have a county water district. There's so many.
But in this instance, we have the assembly member from the area, Kacho Ashajian, who is proposing legislation that would create the Paso Robles groundwater district.
And the difference between this and the others, and the reason why this has to go through the state legislature, is because it's a hybrid makeup of a board. There's a 9-member board. You have 2 large landowners, 2 medium, 2 small, and then 3 at large. And they would make up that board. That required them to go to the state for authority to do so.
Yet, recently, the Board of Supervisors passed a resolution.
Correct.
Which
I don't know if it was a resolution. It
passed, what would you call it?
Well, we have a legislative platform.
Passed a platform.
And on the legislative platform, all it basically said is the Board of Supervisors endorses the efforts to put together a water district for the Paso Robles groundwater basin.
But
then,
yeah, please.
Then Assemblyman Assagian sent back a couple of amendments that would be considered. Well, one in particular, I can't remember what that one in particular was, but at that point in time, and I know the chairman of the board got criticized for sending a letter back to him, but I saw the letter and I agreed with it. We were still within our legislative platform based upon what was being suggested. So we said we still support this. But in the letter that Cacho sent down the first time, it said that any amendment would be brought back for a public hearing and the board to weigh in on it. So we had to bring that back. Now, having said that, that very night after the board meeting, we saw more amendments, suggested amendments. So this keeps changing. And a matter of fact, I haven't even seen the final language that will go before the Senate. Because they have now added more things into this bill as well.
But what's so interesting about this debate is the question of who may vote.
Who gets to vote.
In terms of once the district is formed.
Right.
And, you know, politics makes strange bedfellows. And I was teasing Supervisor Debbie Arnold recently because she went to testify in Sacramento. She's known as more right of center, and next to her was the Sierra Club on the same side of certain issues relating to the district formation. Now we see the board coming out on a 3-2 vote in favor of a one parcel, one vote.
One owner.
One owner, thank you for the one.
And I was very specific, it should not be registered voters. It should be landowners. A registered voter may be a renter. They really have no skin in the game. People that own the property are the ones that should be able to vote.
And what's ironic is if you look at the issue, one could argue that that would be a more liberal with the small L position, and the position taken by others, which they want a vote by acreage, would be a more conservative position. But if you look at the board makeup, the quote liberals came out in favor of by acreage. The vote, you know, slash conservatives came out in favor of by landowner.
And the difficulty, you know, we represent the folks in our areas, and so I know that Debbie has mentioned a number of times that she's trying to do what her constituents want.
Right.
Well, in my district, which I think I have the largest portion of this water basin, with the exception of the 1/3 of it's in Monterey County.
Got it.
I have the Farm Bureau, I have agriculture, I have the cattlemen, and they were opposed to this. I had a lot of the people that were sending letters that were opposed to it.
It's a fascinating debate.
And so to get to a point of saying, well, I'm going to go against everything that you don't want here and do this, it was very, very difficult to do. And my feeling, again, was that if you can get the landowner support right up front, you're going to have an easier time going through LAFCO. If you don't, you're going to have a very difficult time going through LAFCO.
His name is Frank Mecham. He is a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Luis Obispo County. My name is Brad Pomerantz, and this is California Edition.
Thanks.